All right, so today we're going to be tackling a pretty heavy topic.
Yeah.
It's what happens when love starts to fade in a relationship. We all know relationships can be complicated.
Oh, for sure.
And sometimes things just don't work out the way we hope.
Absolutely.
So to help us unpack this a little bit, we've got a great source. It's called The Unraveling of Love. 5 signs she's fallen out of love.
I think even though the title is kind of gendered, we can apply these signs to any relationship.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone experiences these things
Yeah, absolutely.
in different ways.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to dive into these 5 signs and see what's really going on
Yeah.
beneath the surface.
Sounds good.
So the source starts off by listing 5 common causes
Okay.
that can lead to a decline in love. Lack of communication, unresolved conflicts, shifting priorities, lack of intimacy, and outside pressures.
Yeah, those are all really relatable. I think we've all experienced at least one of those at some point in our relationships. It's kind of like neglecting a garden, right?
Ooh, I like that.
If you don't pull out those weeds,
Yeah,
they just take over and choke out all the flowers.
that's such a good analogy. And I think it really highlights how these small things can snowball into bigger issues if they're not addressed.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into those warning signs.
Okay.
The first one is increased distance. And I think we all need our space sometimes, right? But this seems to go beyond just needing some alone time.
Totally. It's more about emotional withdrawal, like your partner's there physically, but they're not really present.
Yeah, it's like they've checked out emotionally.
Exactly. They might avoid those deep conversations or even just everyday chit chat. Like they're not interested in hearing about your day or sharing theirs.
I think it can be so hurtful, right? To feel like you're being shut out.
Absolutely. It can make you feel really alone and isolated.
Okay, so the next sign is lack of initiative. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory, but
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your take on it.
You know how in the beginning of a relationship, there's all that excitement? You're planning dates, surprising each other.
Yeah, you're in the effort.
Exactly. But when someone's falling out of love, that initiative tends to fade. They might stop doing those little things, like sending good morning texts or offering to help with chores.
Like the spark just fizzles out.
Right. And sometimes it's a symptom of something deeper, like unresolved issues or unmet needs.
Okay, moving on to the third sign, criticism and complaints.
Oh, this one's tough.
Right, this one kind of hits home for me because I know I can get nitpicky sometimes.
Oh, we all do.
But this is different, right? It's more about a constant negativity.
Yeah, it's like a pervasive negativity seeping into the relationship. Everything becomes a complaint, the relationship, even things totally unrelated.
It creates this tense atmosphere, right, where you're walking on eggshells all the time.
Exactly. And it leads to defensiveness and resentment, which just makes it harder to communicate openly.
It's like a vicious cycle.
It really is.
All right, let's move on to the fourth sign, which is disinterest in shared activities.
Okay.
Now, I get that as we grow and change, our interests change too.
Sure.
But this seems like more than that.
Yeah. This is about losing interest in things you used to enjoy together, those activities that once brought you closer. Like maybe you used to love going hiking or watching movies together, and now it feels like a chore.
Just like you're growing apart instead of together.
Exactly. And those shared experiences, those things that used to connect you, they start to pull you apart instead.
And finally, we have avoidance of physical affection.
Yeah, that's a big one.
To me, this seems like a pretty clear sign that something's off.
Yeah. Especially when it's combined with those other signs we talked about. Physical touch is such an important part of any romantic relationship.
So a lack of hugs, kisses, even just holding hands, that could be a red flag.
It could be. Now, there could be other reasons for it, of course. But if you notice a decline in physical affection, it's worth paying attention to, especially in the context of those other signs.
So how do you know if it's something to be concerned about or just, a normal fluctuation in a relationship?
I think that's where communication comes in. If you're feeling concerned, talk to your partner about it. Share your observations and feelings in a non-accusatory way and try to understand what's going on for them.
It all comes back to communication.
It really does.
Okay, so before we jump into potential solutions and those expert insights you mentioned, I think it's important to talk about the potential consequences of ignoring these signs. The source talks about emotional pain, further relationship deterioration, loss of trust.
It's serious stuff.
Yeah, this isn't something to take lightly.
Not at all, because ignoring these signs can really hurt both you and your partner. You can end up feeling unloved, worthless, even depressed. And that just creates more distance and resentment, making it even harder to fix things.
It's like those cracks in the foundation we talked about before.
Yeah.
If you don't fix them, they're just going to get bigger and bigger until the whole thing crumbles.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to address these issues early on before they spiral out of control.
That's such a good point. So before we get into those solutions and hear what the experts have to say, I think it's time for a quick break. We'll be right back to explore how to rekindle that spark and maybe even make your relationship stronger than ever.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dive into some solutions for rekindling that spark.
Exactly. Because just knowing the signs isn't enough, right? We got to figure out what to do about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, recognizing those signs is a great first step.
Yeah.
But it's what you do next that really matters.
Exactly. And it's not always easy, but it is possible to turn things around.
So where do we start?
Well, the source highlights open communication, revisiting shared interests, and scheduling quality time. And these are all great starting points.
Yeah, those sound familiar.
But I think it's helpful to see how these principles play out in real-life examples. Remember Emily and Ryan from the source?
Oh, yeah, the couple who had that big communication breakdown.
Exactly. They just stopped talking to each other about the important things.
Yeah, and it just created all this resentment and distance between them.
Right. They let those small issues fester until they became these huge, insurmountable problems.
And then there was David and Sophia, who kind of grew apart because they were so focused on their individual pursuits.
Right. They lost that shared connection, those things that used to bring them together.
It's like they forgot how to be a couple.
Yeah, it happens. But the good news is it doesn't have to end that way. Remember Rachel and Mike?
Oh, yeah. They were the couple who went to couples therapy and really turned things around.
Exactly. Their story shows that even when things seem really bad, there's still hope.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see that it is possible to rekindle that spark.
It absolutely is. And speaking of rekindling, I think those expert insights you mentioned earlier can offer some valuable guidance.
Yeah, let's hear what the experts have to say.
Well, Dr. Sue Johnson had a really interesting perspective on this whole falling out of love thing.
What did she say?
She said it's not necessarily the end of the relationship. She sees it as a chance to reevaluate and reignite the spark.
So like a wake-up call almost.
Yeah, exactly. A chance to take a step back, assess the situation, and figure out what needs to change.
And Dr. John Gottman.
Yes. He emphasized the importance of communication. He said that open and honest communication is key to preventing resentment and disconnection.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're not talking to each other,
right,
how can you possibly understand what the other person is feeling or thinking?
Exactly. And then Dr. Esther Perel, she was all about being proactive. She encouraged couples to recognize the signs early on and take active steps to address those issues and rekindle that connection.
So basically, don't wait until it's too late.
Exactly. Be proactive, communicate openly, and be willing to put in the effort.
Okay, so those are some great insights from the experts. But what about some more practical tips?
Sure. Well, we already talked about open communication, shared experiences, and quality time. But I think it's also important to remember the simple things, like expressing gratitude and appreciation for your partner.
Oh, yeah, that's so important. It's easy to take each other for granted when you've been together for a while. But those little gestures of appreciation can really make a big difference.
They really can. And it's about being mindful, you know? Yeah. Paying attention to those little things that make your partner happy.
And then there's personal growth.
Yes, remember that. Nurturing your own individual interests and passions can actually benefit the relationship.
Yeah, because it's important to have your own thing, your own identity.
Exactly. And when you're happy and fulfilled as an individual, you bring that positive energy into the relationship.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
And I think it's clear that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Nope.
Every relationship is different.
Absolutely.
What works for one couple might not work for another.
Right. But the key is to be open to trying new things, to communicate openly and honestly, and to never stop working on the relationship.
It's a continuous journey, isn't it?
It is, and it's a journey worth taking.
Okay, well, that was a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it was.
But I think it was a really valuable conversation. What are your final thoughts before we wrap things up? Okay, so we've talked about the signs, the causes, the consequences of love fading.
Right.
And we've even touched on some potential solutions.
Yeah.
But now I think it's time to really get practical.
Okay.
How can we actually apply all this to our own lives?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is. Because knowledge is great.
Yeah.
But it's useless if we don't actually do anything with it.
Exactly. So let's say you've been listening to this deep dive and you're recognizing some of these signs in your own relationship. What's the first step?
Well, we've talked a lot about communication.
Right.
But how do you actually start that conversation?
It can be tough, I know. But like we said before, avoiding the issue just makes things worse.
Yeah, it's like sweeping dirt under the rug.
Exactly. It's still there. It's just going to keep piling up. So start by expressing your own feelings and observations.
Okay.
But do it without blaming or accusing your partner.
So how do you do that? What do you actually say?
Try using I statements. Like, I've noticed we haven't been spending much time together lately, and I'm feeling a little disconnected.
Okay, so instead of saying,
yeah,
you never make time for me.
Right, exactly. That just puts your partner on the defensive.
And then what, after you express your feelings?
Then the most important thing is to listen. Really listen to what your partner has to say without interrupting or trying to defend yourself.
Even if you don't agree with what they're saying?
Even then. Try to understand their perspective, even if it's different from yours.
And what if things start to get heated?
Well, sometimes those conversations are tough to have on your own.
Yeah.
That's where a therapist can be really helpful.
Right, they can kind of mediate the conversation.
Exactly. They can help you both stay calm and focused and make sure you're actually hearing each other.
Okay, so besides communication, what else can we do to rekindle that spark?
Well, the source mentioned revisiting shared interests.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those things you used to love doing together?
Yeah. It's so easy to let those things slip away as life gets busy.
It really is. But it's important to make time for those shared experiences. They help you reconnect. Remember why you fell in love in the first place.
So maybe dust off those old board games.
Yeah.
Plan a weekend getaway.
Exactly. Or even just try that new restaurant you've both been wanting to check out.
It's about having fun together again.
Right.
Remembering what it feels like to be a couple.
Exactly. And along with those fun activities, don't forget about quality time.
Just being together.
Yes. Even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Like having dinner together, taking a walk.
Exactly. And during that time, put away your phones.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Turn off the TV. Just be present with each other.
Be mindful and intentional about that time together.
Exactly. And remember what we talked about before, personal growth.
Oh, yeah?
Taking care of yourself, pursuing your own interests, that actually benefits the relationship too.
Yeah, because you can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Exactly. If you're not taking care of yourself, it's hard to give your best to the relationship.
So to wrap things up,
I'll
leave you with a question. If you could choose just one of these solutions to focus on, which one would it be? And what's one small step you could take today to move in that direction? Remember, relationships are a journey.
Absolutely.
They take work and effort, but that effort is so worth it.
It is.
Because love is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it's worth fighting for.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See ya.